like right behind what I did with the pod we did with Rod. It was about 15, 17 minutes.
Yeah.
It was dope. It was fire.
Yeah, the juice in there though. 15
Oh,
minutes of just all the meat.
absolute fire,
Like
man.
yeah, absolute
Absolute
fire.
fire. It was. Whew, Rod. Hey, if you haven't heard that podcast, people, go and check it out. Rod was on fire in the last episode. But as always, man, I am ecstatic and excited when I get to do this content with Mr. Everything, Jeff Iafrate.
Yo, yo, yo.
And I think we got some good things to talk about. I really do. We got the trade deadline. We
Tomorrow.
have
Yep.
Troy Weaver. We got Dwayne Casey. We have a bevy of things to talk about, including I want to talk about these rookies, man. Jaden Ivey, Jalen Duran. They are solid, man, beyond solid. And it posed or brought up this question based on an article that I wrote on the Pistons core four. It's changed. It's no longer the initial core four that Troy Weaver and Dwayne Casey identified. And I want to be able to get into that a little bit too. But where do you want to start, brother?
Well, we can start with the trade deadline and some players that, if you think they'll be moved or not, percentages. Because I think it's an interesting conversation because I do believe you could go through a couple. You could say Sadiq, Bojan, even though I don't think he'll be traded. Nerlens Noel certainly will be traded. Maybe Hamidou Diallo. I mean, there's a couple names you can bring up. And the trade deadline's tomorrow. I'm assuming the Pistons will be selling more than they're buying. Would like them to buy. But in a season like this, if they don't do anything, I am completely okay with it because if you keep the guys, if you keep Sadiq, you're still going to be bad. I mean, and so I don't think it matters. I mean, team usually sell guys when you want to tank. They're tanking, naturally. So I don't think that it's a necessity. You have to make a move. I think knowing Troy, he's proven you could still get deals in the offseason and to his benefit, great deals. I mean, with Jeremy Grant, for example, you wanted him dealt last trade deadline. Didn't. Waited to the offseason. You got Jalen Duran. So
and
I'm not as obsessed with, you got to make a deal. But if there's some players on the market, like a Grant Williams or, maybe an OG Anunoby, even though his asking price is extremely high, that Pistons might even be interested in. So, or maybe even trading Sadiq for a first-round pick, whatever it is, knowing the value of first-round picks and the type of player you can get with first-round picks. Example, Kyrie Irving, who just went for 2 future first, and some other players. So, we'll see. I think knowing Troy, his trigger finger's always itching to make a deal. We know that he's capable, but I'm not too concerned. If nothing happens, nothing happens. I think the only guarantee I'd make is probably Nerlens Noel. I think he'll be dealt. There's no way. I mean, they've pretty much agreed mutually. He will not be playing. He wants to go to another team. Get whatever you can for him. But as far as Sadiq, Bojan, and company, no, I don't foresee a move by tomorrow. But we'll see. You never know. That's what I love about the trade deadline.
Yeah, same here. I don't really foresee them making any big move, any big deal. To trade Sadiq Bey for a future first round or for a coming first round draft pick, you got to know exactly who you're going to get, or else this player becomes a project too. When you start that clock all over again with the development and whatnot.
You're not selling me Cam Reddish.
No,
you're not. The only thing you ain't. I'm sorry. The only thing you're selling me is Reddish I put on my hot dog. I'm not buying Cam Reddish. Now, you could sell me on a first round pick that you could turn into a star player. I'll listen to that. But as far as Cam Reddish, I'm okay.
Yeah, and that's where I was gonna go. The distinction between trading him for another young player, someone else's cast off, versus knowing, what, we can turn the Sadiq Bey draft pick into something like another Jalen Duran.
Right.
You have to take that. You have to make that trade. I like Sadiq Bey. I like what he could bring. I like the fact that this team is finding a way to bolster itself. If Sadiq Bey, Isaiah Stewart, and Killian Hayes long-term okay with, if they have to play off the bench, if they're coming off the bench to be the 6th, 7th, 8th, and still get their 25 to 30 minutes a night, and they recognize this is a path for a championship, this is a path for them to be as legendary or as thought of as guys like Lindsey Hunter, Corliss Williamson, and some of the others that came off the bench for the 2004 Pistons that played huge roles. Lindsey Hunter, bro, you look up the Pistons playoff records.
Pitbull,
We've done this before.
He's a dog.
He's all over their records. All over the records. So it's like you can make an impact if you're dedicated to this squad. And if you remember, Lindsey Hunter was brought in. He was drafted to replace Isaiah Thomas. He was brought in to be a small, speedy shooter, scorer, and ultimately, after a couple stints,
good defender too.
Great defender.
Yeah.
He found his role. He found his niche here. And bro, do they win in 2004 realistically without Lindsey Hunter?
No.
they would come off the bench, and I know other point guards were like, crap. Him and Mike James, what'd you call them? The pit bulls, right?
Yeah, some pit bulls, man.
Sheesh,
and I think that's the difference too, is you had guys that were self-aware, knew their roles, and embraced their roles, excelled at their roles. With Sadiq,
despite expectation or where they were drafted. I think Lindsey
absolutely
Hunter is a great example.
And I think that there's a self-awareness. Like for Sadiq Bey, he's been a good player. Haven't really seen the progression maybe you'd hope. And there's certainly value with Sadiq Bey off your bench. But the question is, there's always going to be a difference. Sometimes there isn't, but usually between a player and an organization, between what their value is. Sadiq might feel his value is 4 for 80. But Troy might say, you're crazy. We're not paying you 4 for 80. So if you're not extending Sadiq, you got to trade him. So I get the business aspect. If you're just talking to player, yeah, I agree. I mean, Sadiq off your bench would be great, but he might not view himself as a bench player. He might think, I'm good enough to start in this league. And if he doesn't fit the Pistons' plans moving forward, you got to make a decision.
Yep. Unless
you're Lindsey Hunter and you embrace it. Like Killian Hayes, I think, may embrace that. Killian Hayes would do that.
He's the guy. And we're going to get to that. Killian Hayes, Andre Drummond, Lindsey Hunter. We're going to get into that.
By the way, you see Andre Drummond, I don't mean to throw shade, but man, did you see that clip last night?
I'm trying to hide
the Euro step.
I'm trying to hide
airball layup,
man.
And I'm not going to lie to you, love Andre, but you can't lie. You've seen that multiple times in a Pistons uniform.
I talked about that this morning with Anthony Bellino, man. Shout out to him and the Michigan Sports Network. We talked about that this morning, and how Jalen Duren.
For him.
I love Andre Drummond. You guys know that. I love him as a person. I think he's a good person, but he has to learn to play within his skill set.
Yeah,
that's what Jalen Duren has.
Self-awareness, like we mentioned.
Self-awareness.
That's key. Yeah,
self-awareness. And Killian Hayes, he's a guy that if he gets a self-awareness, he could become a Lindsey Hunter type of guy.
Right.
Not in terms of just one-to-one skill, but in terms of impact on the game. He could be that guy that is a thread or the backbone of a pretty solid defense as it relates to coming off the bench and anchoring things. I really believe that Killian Hayes can be that if he, as you have so aptly put it, is self-aware. Last year it was, what was our term? What are they asked to do? This year I believe is self-aware.
Yeah.
That's it. And who's going to accept that? Because if not, then this is the connection. Does he become an Andre Drummond? These players are players we see right now. With Sadiq Bey, Killian Hayes, and I'm going to put Isaiah Stewart in there, whether he starts or not, that if they don't accept their limitations, if they don't play to their strengths, if they don't play, honestly, to a winning brand of basketball, do they become Andre Drummonds?
Well, it starts building good habits, not the opposite, building bad habits. And you watching the Pistons, it's hard to tell the difference because you're seeing a lot of bad habits repeat themselves. And of course, they're young. But I think that's the number one thing, is to get away, to be self-aware. Like Andre Drummond was allowed to build bad habits over a long period of time where it just became his identity. Like, this is who I am. Those things need to be nipped in the butt early on. And with Jalen Duren, I don't even think it really needs to be nipped in the butt. I think he just is self-aware as it is. Like, he knows, hey, this is what I'm good at. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it at a high level. Andre, and again, feels like his skill set is much more expanded than it really is, but that's part of self-awareness. It's super important.
Yep. Yeah. And that's the point of it all here, man. And I guess to bring it back around to the trades of it all, if Sadiq Bey, if Killian Hayes, are self-aware as it relates to their roles coming off the bench and things of that nature, which they both have said, you know what, yeah, we get it. I don't know what that means for their contracts, because ultimately that's the other aspect of it. How do you not have these players become Andre Drummonds? Well, the GM can't go out there and overpay them.
Exactly. That's the other part of it. Yeah. Because if I'm getting paid 30, I'm a play like I'm being paid 30. I'm gonna try to, at least.
I'm going out there and do whatever I want to do.
Exactly.
It's my show. It's my show. If you're gonna give me that type of money, 25 is where it started for Andre Drummond, and by the time he was gone, he was getting what, 27.9 million a year.
And he hasn't made it. I don't think he's made close to a yearly salary since then. He's been paid,
and Troy ain't paid nobody more than that. What was it, 20 million a year contracts max? Jeremy Grant, Bojan Bogdanovic, he's not going over that. And you know what that does? That should tell Sadiq Bey. That should tell these guys the most you can get is under what these guys got. Sadiq Bey has not necessarily, and I get it, these contracts are given based on trajectory and things of that nature. And I'm glad you brought that point up, because we said it. This is a year where business decisions had to be made.
That's it.
For these guys, especially for that first draft class for Troy Weaver's.
Who's staying? Who's going?
Had to be made.
Yeah.
And it's starting to really work itself out. You know, if people want these extra contracts that just doesn't, it's not palatable to the restoration, they can't be here. And it's, you know, it's interesting, you know, with this squad and this whole aspect of core four, previous Pistons regimes would have rolled that original core four into the ground, bro, until it just broke. And I wrote about this with what Troy Weaver is doing. And the reason why I have trust and faith in him as we approach this deadline is because of the fact that he doesn't rest on his laurels.
Mm-hmm.
He's not just going to wait around and let something be bad like we saw with the buffoonery year Pistons. Hey, we're going to just sign these guys and just even pay them to go away. It's like, no, I'm going to get value. So if I might have missed on somebody, I'm going to make sure I get value. At the very least, I'm either going to pay you to be a reputable backup point guard, Killian Hayes, or I'm going to trade you and I'm going to get something out of this. And that's the track record that he has shown. Instead of using the word, you know, replacing the core four, I'm hoping that Troy Weaver has found out a way to expand the core so that these guys can be a foundational piece. But I have confidence and faith that he's not going to go and overpay those guys to make it happen.
No. And part of that's patience, which Troy has. And I know patience is the worst term for fans. That is the worst thing. People hear patience. They're like, oh, patient for what? Let me tell you something, because previous general managers, not just for the Pistons, but for Lions, I mean, this is a common thing. When you're not patient and you make decisions based off, you know, we got to fix this thing right now, 9 out of 10 times it typically doesn't work out for you, and we've seen that. So the patience with what Troy's doing, right? It's a multi-year rebuild. You're collecting young assets. You're getting assets that he knows will be able to be flipped. Like a Jeremy Grant, he knows, hey, a couple years if it doesn't work out, Jeremy's still a good player. Bojan, still a good player. Like, you're getting guys that are just good players instead of taking chances or taking, like, even the project thing. Like, I know we were joking about Ken Reddish being another project. Like, even getting guys like Marvin Bagley or Kevin Knox, like, you might have raised their trade value just by having those guys. So again, I applaud
about Bagley at this trade deadline for some reason.
And Bagley, to me, man, and that's another one. We'll get to him. Probably we can even talk about him today. I don't know where his fit is, man. I'm starting to, like, it's become a little, it's becoming a little more unclear to me, because Marvin Bagley, when he first came here, of course, they like the upside, you like what he can be, but the reality is, for Marvin Bagley, where does he fit? And if he comes off your bench, I mean, Marvin brings things that I think are valuable, right? I mean, what he can bring in terms of scoring in the post, being a lob threat. Defensively, of course, we know he's not a great defender. He can't really shoot. And I think that's where things kind of do get separated a little bit, because he's not going to play center. He's not. He's not a center in today's NBA. He's your 4. But even then, it's tough, because you'd like him to play center in today's NBA, but he can't. He's just not good defensively. So a lot of guys on this current team, futures, you can't really determine right now. So Troy's has a lot to work with this roster, but he still has a lot to figure out as well. And with the path they're currently on, I haven't lost hope. I know people look at this roster and think, well, Troy's fault for this or Troy's fault for that. Troy has there's nothing to even talk about with Troy Weaver right now with this roster. It's not a complete roster. If this roster they were contending for the play-in and you weren't seeing moves and you didn't expect any moves going forward, then you could critique the roster. There's going to be moves. I mean, Saddiq Bey being rumored already. Marvin Bagley, he's injured. But when he comes back healthy, maybe in the offseason, he's got a 3-year contract. It's only $10 million a year. We'll see where his value lies, but I wouldn't be surprised if he was dealt as well. So again, a lot of decisions Troy's going to have to make, but with currently as constructed, with all the young talent they've had, I mean, they have currently Jalen Duren, Ivy, Cade. You got to have confidence, man, in the assets he's been able to build. So as much as we can talk about, Troy didn't do a good job bringing in these types of players and doing this in the offseason, the overall message you got to kind of stamp is you've collected talent. And that's it right there. So Troy's done his job to this point. I don't have much bad to say about him. I know people are quick to criticize Troy, which is just same thing for the Lions. I mean, people were criticizing Brad Holmes. The Lions were 1-6, and then they went 8-2 down the stretch, and now everyone loves Brad Holmes again. It's like, dude, stay consistent. Do you hate him or you love him? And Troy, so far, I got no complaints to him. I don't. Whatsoever.
That's a great point. I'm glad that you brought up Brad Holmes.
I'm going to trust them until I can't trust them. That's always been my motto with Brad Holmes or Troy Weaver. I'm going to trust these guys until they show me I cannot trust them.
Yep.
Like Joe Dumars, trusted him, and then at the end of it, his tenure, you're like, okay, well, I don't know if I like these moves, right?
Yeah.
Or Ed Stefanski, all right, but didn't move the needle for me. Stan Van Gundy, okay, coach being your general manager, yeah, I'll pass on that after a couple years. So I don't get it, man. I don't get the Troy Weaver hate. I don't.
I mean, it's important to allow these things, allow these GMs to see their visions through.
Yeah,
Sometimes we don't understand what puzzle they're trying to put together, and there's been times when we thought this is the great puzzle. This is what we want to see, and it wound up being egg on our face.
Yeah.
With Troy Weaver, though, he's shown that he's patient. He's not going to move at anybody else's pace, and the reason why that's important is because Joe Dumars was nudged into drafting Darko. He was nudged into drafting Andre Drummond.
right.
Troy Weaver is stating, listen, I actually have a proficiency in player development. I have a proficiency in player scouting. We see the pictures and we understand that this man has been on the scene everywhere that every level of basketball that you can play, whether it's pro-am, whether it's AAU, whether it's college, whether it's NBA, and everything in between. I'm sure he's probably even showed up to some people's church league games.
Oh, but put up a quick 30-point triple-double.
Yep, and that's the difference. So it's just like, okay, look, with Killian Hayes, I remember the talk being, hey, he's kind of a project. We're going to work with him for a little bit. He's a point guard. He's learning the NBA game, not just how to be an NBA point guard. He's learning a whole new brand of basketball.
The pace, everything, yeah.
Rod took it a step further. He said overseas, they literally lay their jerseys out in the lockers. He said they put their shoes out. He's like, they're pressing and make sure they got warm towels and things. Like here, no, that game is a whole lot different. You're not treated like that. You know what I mean? It's about what you do, and there's a whole lot to this that they understood. And I'm grateful that they understood these components,
right?
Because previous GMs did not. What happens to Killian Hayes if he was drafted underneath a previous general manager? He doesn't develop into what we can say, you know what? Other people are stating it. He's going to, at the very least, be very good backup point guard with the ability to start if your starting point guard goes down.
And that's the tough one. I mean, you can't have it both ways. You can't have your cake and eat it too. People get mad about Spencer Dinwiddie or Chris Middleton, but then they don't want to wait a year for Killian Hayes.
Goodness.
It's like, come on, man.
Which
one is it? I mean, which one is it? I don't get it. So would you rather trade Killian and he becomes a career good backup for another team and you lost him? Or do you keep him, wait it out, and if he stinks for a long period of time, you trade him?
Yep.
But he's actually shown things this year. So I'm on the opposite now.
Yeah, like I told you, for Killian Hayes this year, what I wanted to look at was the ups and downs and how he responded from them, because players go through them, especially bench players, especially role players. They go through stretches and streaks, and you just want to see, who is he really? So if he goes through 2 games down, if he goes through 5 games down, does he have the ability to come back? Is his confidence still there? We talked about
and he showed that.
Yeah, go 1 for 5, but are you doing it looking confidently? Is your shot off, or are you off? Those were the things that I wanted to be able to see with Killian Hayes this year. If you're going through a slump, you're just going through a slump. We've seen Killian Hayes do that. We see Saddiq Bey do that. I don't care about that.
Right.
But we had confidence in Cade Cunningham. We had confidence in Saddiq Bey. We said it all year. Saddiq Bey is going to be fine. Who's complaining about him right now? But with Killian Hayes, we didn't know if he had the ability to be able to put forth that type of effort despite, to break slumps, to show that you are this type of player. We didn't know.
To insert himself offensively.
Exactly.
Scoring specifically. Yeah, no.
It's self-awareness. Right? That's the
self-awareness.
That's the word. That's the phrase, man.
That's what it is.
Hey, brother, I'm gonna bring you in here. Hey, listen, guys, we're trying to do some cool things with Woodward Pistons. We got some new voices.
Want to sit down?
You'll always be familiar with with Miss Iafrate and I. But we got some new people that are joining the squad.
What's up, everybody?
Hey, Matt Broder. Yes, sir. Listen, because look, it's important. We got the NBA trade deadline coming up. We have people who are doubting the coach. We have people who are doubting some of the picks. We have people who are doubting even, shall we say, Troy Reaper, Grim Weaver, whatever you want to call him, man, the mastermind behind the mess or the future treasure that we see before us, that is the Detroit Pistons. So I want to be able to get your just any quick thoughts or takes based on the things I know you were just kind of off camera hearing us talk about, but where you at with these Pistons in this trade deadline and Troy Weaver?
I'm in the wait and see mode. I'm totally in Troy Weaver's court in terms of just trusting what decisions he's making behind the scenes. And I take that both from his experience in Oklahoma City, but also how quickly he's turned over our roster and our cap space. It's the Pistons were the Pistons were probably at the bottom of the popularity scale 2 years ago from people in Detroit and all around the NBA. Just wasn't a very exciting team. We didn't have a lot to look forward to. And in a short period of time, he's totally turned this roster around. I'm not rushing him to make a huge deal at the deadline. I love guys like Bojan and Alec Burks. I think championship teams need shooters. So, hey, if you're not going to move them and you're going to commit to them, I'm okay with that. The goal is to get those guys anyway. So I'm just interested to see how he handles a trade deadline like this and going into this summer with our high draft pick possibility.
Yep. And you know what? Based on what Troy Weaver has already shown, I believe that people, they have a right to be honestly to trust him. I to sit here and to wonder just because we're going through the middle of a restoration, which realistically could be flipped over by next season. It's like, come on, we're not there yet. Give it some time. See this thing through. There's the most cap space we've had in a very long time this offseason. A high draft pick, another one that's going to go with draft picks that continue to make the Rising Stars games. Like next year, like that's going to be just an all Detroit Pistons fest, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and these are things you want to see. And then we have to keep in mind, they are young. So with the cap space, I'm hoping that Troy Weaver, as our guys are going crazy across the hall, I'm hoping that Troy Weaver can actually, put or augment the right players around these young guys so that they can do what they have to do. They need to win. It's been a very long time. We're not going to sit here and sugarcoat that. The last 3 playoffs they got swept out of, and they really probably didn't belong in those playoff appearances. So it's just like, I get it. People are upset. People are frustrated. There's a lot of people who aren't looking at the inner workings of what's going on. And so they're just looking at, they had lottery picks the last 3 years and they're still not winning. They're not necessarily clued in. So I get it.
And on a night-to-night basis, it doesn't always look so clean. Like you understand why people are getting frustrated. It's right. When you don't see the vision, every night, it's easy to get off that bandwagon with all these young players, just a lot of young players, and it doesn't always look like there's structure. But I do believe there is a plan behind the scenes. It looks different without Cade. It is what it is.
There you go.
It's what you're going to do. But man, these pieces we have, there are 7 pieces in there that are going to be a part of this team in 2 to 3 years.
Yep.
And I'm excited about that. I look at Killian like a Ricky Rubio, like a Goran Dragic, 10 years in, 8, 9, 10 years in. It took him a minute. Goran actually had a little better start to his career, but
yeah.
The European game and come transitioning to the NBA, it's a different style of basketball, different speed. Rubio is one of the best backups in the NBA now. He was a really high pick for the Timberwolves to be the next point guard. He's a playmaker. He can't even play defense. Killian can play defense.
Yeah.
In fact, he's one of our best perimeter defenders, which is an asset you're going to want on your team, or a team is going to want. So, man, give him time.
Yep. And I get it. Like I said, the impatience factor, it shouldn't be with this regime. If you want to be impatient with the Detroit Pistons in general and say, you know what, I'm going to check out, tell me when I should tune back in, I get that. I get that because it takes your time. I'm not telling people to tune out. I think that to be a part of the process of what's going on right now makes, when they start winning, something so much more sweet to enjoy. So much more sweet to enjoy. I was clued into the Teal era Pistons, man. I was super clued into them. So when they started to dismantle that team, when they traded Jerry Stackhouse and they got rid of some of the other players that I was endeared to, despite the fact they were losing, it was just like, all right, well, where are they going? But to be a part of it all, to see it, to see guys like Jerome Williams, Jerry Stackhouse get traded for the betterment of this squad, it was like, okay, let me be patient. At this point in time, what are you going to do? And 2004 was so much sweeter with that championship because I was an avid fan of Grant Hill. I was an avid fan of Jerry Stackhouse. I loved the unknown guys like Don Reed, Jerome Williams, Junkyard Dog. You know what I mean? Like I love
Corliss
those
Williamson.
guys.
Did he make it into that era? He was teal and a little bit of red, white, and blue.
I feel like I don't know. I don't remember. I gotta go back and look at that. Yeah, you're
It was
right.
right
though.
in that 2000 range. So
You're
maybe
right. He came in just before and she came in obviously right in the middle of the 2004 season.
after
right
one game with the Hawks.
honestly, like basically after the trade deadline,
Yeah.
technically.
Yeah.
Well, it was announced after the trade deadline.
Rashid?
Yep.
Yeah, because he got traded one game to the Hawks, and then Joe Dumars went and sniped him.
Yep. For Lindsey Hunter.
In Rebracha? Zelko Rebracha?
Yeah.
Or was that a different trade?
No,
I might be mixing my trades up.
I think it might have been Zelly and Lindsey Hunter. But Lindsey Hunter was a part of it because I remember they cut Lindsey and he came right back.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like,
talking
yes.
about. We need some Lindsey. I know he's part of the network now, but we need Lindsey Hunter type guys on a championship team.
Bro, we were just talking about
Were you really?
Look at the Pistons all-time playoff leaders. You're going to see Lindsey Hunter all over the points, the assists, the steals. He's all over that thing. It's amazing. And three-pointers, too. It's amazing to see the impact he had. And you need guys like that. And that's what we were saying. Though Weaver's first draft class isn't his core four, I do believe that these guys have opportunity to have impacts like guys like Lindsey Hunter. Why can't Killian Hayes become or have the type of impact off the bench that Lindsey Hunter did? Why not? The defense, I believe, can get there. The three-point shooting needs to get there, and a level of aggression. This is where Killian has to actually take a big step forward. Lindsey Hunter getting to the basket. Come on, man. And there were years where he would dunk too.
Mm-hmm.
There were years he would dunk it. So it's like, I want to see that level of aggression. And I think that unlocks a lot for Killian Hayes. It does. When you can get to the free throw line, imagine what that does for your shot. I remember as a basketball player, especially in college, in high school, and big games, I always wanted to try and get to the line early because it gave me an opportunity with the nerves going, with the sweat going, with the basketball of it all going, with the defense going, to just practice my shot. Now, because that's a different shot.
And to feel it go through the hoop.
And see it and feel it. That's a totally different level of playing than even when you're warming up.
Mm-hmm.
It's just different. And so, yeah, I want to see him be able to do that. I believe that will help his game tremendously. It will help his shooting. It will help his confidence, especially when you're going to the bench and you see, oh, I got 5-6 points. Well, it's easy to get those 5 or 6 points when you're going to the free throw line.
Yeah. Yeah. That's how you get that average up an extra 4 or 5 points a game.
Mm-hmm.
You need a championship team needs someone like that coming off the bench or multiple guys. Maybe Livers is that guy from the big man standpoint who comes off the bench and locks up the best 3, 4, or 5. Yeah. You need that point guard, that shooting guard who can guard 1, 2, 3.
I wanted to ask you this though, with the NBA trade deadline looming tomorrow.
Yes.
Is there anything that you want to see the Pistons do? And that's the first question too. Do you think they're going to do anything of major consequence?
I don't think they are, unless they get a package for maybe not even Bojan, for Burks that they just can't pass up on. And I want to keep both of them. I do, but I don't see them making a move. I just don't think the playoff teams that are going to want some of our pieces, their pieces don't excite me as much. Like we talk about making a trade with the Celtics, like I want guys like Malcolm Brogdon with Grant Williams. I just don't know if that's possible. But it's something they might be looking to get rid of Brogdon. Like I want a leader. If we're making trades, if we're changing our team right now in the middle of the season, it's to bring in someone who can change the dynamic going into next
Malcolm
season.
Brogdon. I'm just sitting here thinking about what you were saying.
Me too.
I'm just like, yo,
he's not the perfect offensive player, but he's reliable. He can come off the bench. He can start. Defense. Exactly. Cade's going to have the ball. We're going to have plenty of guards who will have the ball in our hands. He's a point guard who doesn't need that to affect the game. Marcus Smart, although he's an incredible playmaker, he doesn't need the ball on offense to have an impact on the game. Yep. To not just have an impact, to be the best player on the court. Actually, with Tatum and Brown, that might be a little bit of a stretch, but
that's why they work though, because Marcus Smart can have stretches and has shown stretches where he was at some points the best player on the court, whether that's by design, whether that's the plays, whether someone had an off night and he just happens to be the bucket that night. He's having an impact both ways that realistically it is hard to quantify. Jason Tatum obviously is the guy. Jaylen Brown obviously is the number 2, but Marcus Smart is not a number 3 by default. He's a number 3 because he deserves to be that number 3.
Yeah, he's like a Draymond on Golden State. Like no one's going to argue Steph, Clay are the best players on that team. But do they win those championships without Draymond?
And that's what I'm saying. Like we've had third best players on our, this is our third option, but it was just because of circumstance. Marcus Smart, he belongs to be in that in that position. So yeah, I get the point that you're
Yeah.
making on that. I really do. And you wish that Killian could step into some type of a confidence role to do it. He has the skills. It's just all up here.
Yeah.
All up here, man. Like I said, the one skill he needs to improve on, getting to the rim, getting to the free throw line. But in terms of his basketball acumen, I'm just like, bro, you got it. Go out there and act like you got it.
If you're thinking about a point guard you want on your team, forget Killian's name. Like, you want a playmaker who can play defense, perimeter defense. Like, those are probably your first two, necessities. He does that. Let him get better, like you're saying. Let him build his confidence. And I love Killian's game. Who to be determined if he's going to work out. I would love for him to work out here because I do love his game. But, the things he does, he's going to be a valuable piece in the NBA.
He's proven to be that at least his baseline is going to be a backup point guard, a valuable backup point guard in the NBA for some time. For me, I continue to look around. Obviously, there are names that you're like, yo, this guy would be cool with the Pistons, but I don't see anything that really moves the needle for me. Right. Not yet. Like at the last year's trade deadline, I told people, look, if someone is willing to pay the price that Troy said, one young player and an unprotected first round pick for Jeremy Grant, and he set that price tag again for Bojan Bogdanovic, then sure, you trade it and you roll the dice, but you are rolling the dice. But if you can get to the offseason and make a trade for a draft pick in which the player you want is there, or they have a young player or star that they're willing to let go of, then fine. Because isn't that how we got Jeremy Grant? Isn't that how we wound up getting Isaiah Stewart? Those deals came by way of trades.
Troy Weaver.
Magic. Yeah, you mean trading unrestricted free agent in Christian Wood? How do you trade an unrestricted free agent and you get the haul? How do you win that trade? Like, the Houston Rockets could have just signed him. But instead, it was like, hey, I'm going to sign and trade this guy who I have no control or rights to. And I'm going to get out of this deal. I think that was the deal that brought in, I want to say, Isaiah Stewart and freed up the cap space, created the cap space, or it created the maneuvering for him to be able to go and sign Jeremy Grant. Because I know brought in Ariza. We were able to do something with his money, get it off the books. We traded a couple more players out of here. And voila, Jeremy Grant and some hope.
Yeah.
I love it. I love what he's been able to do. And that was from a player that we had with no assets, no cap space, nothing to work with. And we don't want to give this person who's already flipped the roster over with nothing at least one off season with something. Come on.
Well, I mean, I hate to always go back to the Oklahoma City Thunder, but look at the type of patience that they've endured, and they're fine. It's starting to hit now. They got their guy with SGA, and they've had all these picks and all these. Some have worked out, some haven't, but
they're still turning the dial, though.
They still are turning. They're still getting better. They're getting Chet back next year. They're gonna have a decent draft pick. Like, we arguably have the best free agent sign in the offseason when we get Cade back. Then we're gonna get a top 5 pick, hopefully 1 or 2, hopefully 1. Like, these are transactions that the Pistons are gonna have without doing anything else.
Yep.
Like, this is where Troy Weaver is playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. Like, he's, if there's one move I'd want to see, I'd want to see him go get his pick from the Knicks back just to say he did, just to say he got Jalen Duren out of nowhere, out of thin air.
Yeah.
Like, I want him to be able to say it, but obviously that trade's probably not going to happen. But I love guys like Kuzma. I don't know if it's the time to bring him here. I love Matisse Thybulle. Oh, there he is. Like, if I'm the Pistons, I go after young wing perimeter defenders. I'd sacrifice offense if we're getting free agents.
Yeah,
we'll find the offense. Cade will find a way, but I want a Thybulle. I want a Herb Jones, maybe a Trey Murphy.
Let's
go.
I got to get Jeff in here before we wrap up because I want to talk about Dwayne Casey. We got to talk about it. So let's do that. I see, Raj. Thank you for joining us. Matt Broder, you guys are definitely going to be seeing a lot more faces, some more opinions, some more takes, and just some more personalities and fun.
Let's definitely. Go. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, bro.
Jeff.
I know he was holding it down. I could trust Matt, dude. Comes in here, holds it down. So, Dwayne Casey, I grabbed some tissue paper because just in case I cry here, because I got a lot of I've been talking about Dwayne for months now, man. It's getting so old, but
oh man,
and I feel like we haven't really changed our stance, and I just keep reiterating our stance.
Yeah.
feel like a broken record. And I'll
Absolutely
start with what
broken.
I've always thought, is Dwayne to me, it's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to criticize Dwayne. I think all that is it's rightfully so. But to say fire him now, it makes no sense to me. It never will. I assume Troy will make a move in the offseason. I do believe that. I don't know Troy personally. I don't know the information. But it makes the most sense. If you're expecting this team next season to contend for the play-in, you could probably make an argument. We talked about this, that if this team has talent, you trust Dwayne, because we've seen Dwayne with talent. I'm talking talent, not young guys. Because people, well, the last couple of years, Dwayne has won more than 30 games or whatever. But
We're talking about veterans.
We're talking about veterans.
Stars.
You've seen him, what he can do with those. I mean, if it wasn't for LeBron, he could have made the finals. I mean, it is what it is. LeBron owned that conference while he was here. So personally, I would look for a new voice, somebody that can not only relate to players, but somebody who's played the position. Like, for example, I would prefer, and I don't have names off the top of my head, this is where the offseason and stuff will all come into play.
Yeah.
A former point guard would be great. I would love a point guard. That's why I always say Chauncey. It's like my pipe dream, man. Having Chauncey as the head coach, because you need someone that can not only relate to the players, relate to the city, knows what it takes to win in Detroit, which would be a cherry on top.
Yeah.
But also grooming Jaden, grooming Cade, like even having experience to help groom Jalen Duren, playing with Ben Wallace or whoever the player, just knowing like the IQ of these guys, former players, is where the NBA is going. And I do believe that's the route for the Pistons. For a timeline, I would say this offseason. But again, I think Dwayne, I think highly of him as a human being. I think the players love him. You're seeing, Steven Silas. Have you seen the clip of him walking out of the presser after the game? He's like, these guys aren't playing defense.
I feel so bad for Steven Silas because I think he's a heck of a coach. I do. I think I believe that in a much better situation.
You think he could coach? Maybe it's the player, the personnel, the players. Yeah. But that's the point. Like, Dwayne hasn't come out, or players haven't thrown Dwayne under the bus. So I like the culture, but the bad habits, them building bad habits and not correcting things. You've seen them correct it for a game and then go back to it. And then that's part of youth. And of course, I mean, these guys, to be consistent at something, that takes experience, that takes doing it over a long period of time. And it's just second nature to you. But I do believe that there'll be a change this offseason. I really do believe that. I don't think there's no reason to make a change right now. Zero reason.
Yeah, to make a change right now, we've talked about it ad nauseum. Rod's talked about it. You've talked about it. I've talked about it. Others have talked about it. It doesn't serve the Pistons any purpose. There's no point in saying, hey, let's just get rid of him now. Who are you bringing in? Why are you doing this? If the rumors or the rumblings or the overwhelming feeling that he's going to wind up in the front office is true, and this is a season that is kind of working out with the best case scenario, if they make the play in, that's the worst case scenario. When we were talking about in pondering and questioning, could they make the play in? Well, people were telling us, why are y'all saying they should make the play in? Let's get this high draft pick. This is a transformative draft year. Well, that worked out for us. And our players are developing. What if Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren weren't developing?
Right. And you know what's funny? People will still say that narrative that's another false narrative. Like, players are not developing. What? What are you talking about? Like, now defensively, they got to develop. I'm 100% with you. But so hold on a second. So Isaiah Stewart increasing all of his averages this year and shooting a good percentage from three. Yeah, we'll just throw that out the window. I guess that doesn't matter. Jalen Duren making the progress he's made. That doesn't matter, I guess. Jaden Ivey, especially lately with his playmaking ability, we'll just toss that out the window.
He looks sure of himself now.
Yes. And if people say, well, Sadiq Bey was inconsistent coming into the league, and he's inconsistent now. Like, what do you want Dwayne to do? Hey, Sadiq, can you be consistent for me?
No, you know what Dwayne Casey did? The same thing we did. He's a slow starter. Every year we said, look, and this is why he went to add versatility to his game. So, we saw the Sadiq Bey this year, only a slow shooting start. Look at his box score numbers. Will he have some duds every now and then because his role changes? But he's consistently been this 14 points.
And he's hit some big shots
and hit big shots.
And they trust him.
And we said it. Just wait till the 3-point shot comes around. And all of a sudden he's shooting 40% in the last 15 games, and he's looking like what was he in the last so many games? 20 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists.
He's balling.
And like 38% from three or something like that. Like,
Don't forget too, save the best for last. Killian Hayes. Like, come on, dude. This guy, especially the first 15 games or so, we almost just wrote him off. I mean, we not meaning us, but it just Pistons fans in general, just completely writing him off. We talked about it. We never questioned his ability. We questioned his mentality. Yeah, that's the difference. Not ability, mentality. You saw the mentality shift, and it helps when your coach trusts you, right? I mean, if your coach trusts you, and he like that matters. Dwayne showed that. So I got nothing to say about Dwayne as a person, as a coach that can develop players. I just think simply as the second oldest coach in the NBA, I just don't think he has a lot left.
Here's an interesting question.
To give. And why push it? Why have Dwayne for another 2 years and then have to change? Why not just make a change now and allow your new coach to groom with these young players? Like get the rapport already started, the chemistry, the relationships, like that. That's what matters to me. As much as I love Dwayne, I think you can move him into the front office, get somebody, and these guys can get off fresh start, new expectations. Well, similar expectations, but new voice. Like that stuff matters. It does.
And why would you move him into the front office if you don't know if he can do the job that you're hoping he can do? What he's showing this year is that he actually can help. Everyone had question marks about can he develop young talent. Based on what's happening this year, he's showing that he can develop young talent. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
And so for him to move into the front office, it's not like, well, let's just throw him there just to throw him there. No, this is now a situation in which, hey,
fam, dude.
Hey, Lady Kool-Aid. We got Lady Kool-Aid. We got Kid Kool-Aid. Came back to say what up.
Dude, little man, dog. Man. It's like a little brand. Man. He's a mini you, dude. That's your mini me. I swear, bro.
Hey, he's hooping too.
Jeez, I don't want none of that work. I don't want any of that work.
Well, we've been in the lab getting it in. Definitely getting it in. But I mean, this stuff, it is what it is, man.
You trust Troy to make that decision. I mean, I keep bringing the same thing up. It's like the Steve Eiserman thing, man. It's like people were just harping on him to fire Jeff Blashill during the season, and he waited till before the draft fired him, and now no one's complaining. Like it's always like, and people want results. They want a pound of flesh. It's like we demand you fire Dwayne. Is that the best route right now?
Dwayne does not erase the years between the going to work Pistons and this time.
No,
and that's the problem. No. And people are looking for, because they're not clued into what's going on. I told this to Matt. They're looking for. They're just going, hey, it's been 15 years. It's like it hasn't quite been 15 years, not at all. For Troy Weaver, it's been 3 years and rebuilt 2. And next year, this thing could get accelerated. It just can. Like the cap space, the high draft pick, the young players taking a step forward, and Cade Cunningham healthy for the first time in his basketball career ever. Healthy? Yeah, that could be like fuel on the fire next year, man.
Yeah.
So it's just like, you got to see how these things go. You paid this man to do this. If we've rolled the wheels off the bus for lesser attempts where we knew Brandon Knight's not working, Josh Smith, Greg Monroe, and Andre Drummond is not working, they still rolled it. Like Charlie V and Ben Gordon, it's not working. These other smaller eras in between, the buffoonery eras, we sat there and we looked at this stuff.
Right.
This is an era in which you can actually see this is progressing faster than the process. I believe we've gotten already more players that can become all-star level guys than the process has produced. The Philadelphia 76ers. And I believe that this upcoming draft is going to give us another high-level talent. There's just too many guys, from Brandon Miller to the Thompson twins, just depending on your flavor. If you fall out of that top 2. So it's like the Pistons are going to get a solid player to add to the mix, as well as go out here in free agency and just say, hey, what do I want? Troy Weaver had what Detroit tax has he paid? None. He ain't paid that Detroit tax. People thought Jeremy Grant was overpaid. It was not. It was an underpay by the end of that. And his first season away from Detroit, he's about to get a max deal.
I'll probably get 30 a year.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Probably get 30 a year, 4 for 120.
Exactly. So yeah, I think with Casey, I agree with you. I want to see him be able to prove himself, and I think he is doing that aptly with the relationships he's built, player personnel, player development. Those things are crucial because we want to see Jaden Ivey, Jalen Duren, and these guys fare better than previous draft picks. What happened with Brandon Knight, Stanley Johnson, Sekou Doumbouya? These guys had skills and talents. We know that. But what happened to them? So that's why when we're talking about contrasting these eras, though the wins and losses aren't there, though the schemes that might make us scratch our head, there's a little bit of pot of gold here that is actually better than any era of Pistons basketball that I can remember, going back to maybe the Bad Boys. They develop young players. What other one of our teams going back 30 years has done or been able to produce with young players in terms of their growth? What Casey has. We want to see the wins. We do. So yeah, if there's a place for him in the front office, I'm hoping it's still working with these players in that capacity, and then being able to get a younger coach who can put this team in their best spot schematically.
And especially watching the OKC Thunder take on the Los Angeles Lakers. LeBron broke the scoring record. That's my GOAT, by the way. You can feel how you want about it. You can call me an idiot. I just want to throw that in there. Stamping that. But how the Thunder played basketball is like ideal to what you want the Pistons to be. Having SGA, he's a 30-point scorer. So clearly there's levels to this. But you're assuming Cade and Jaden can be that much or bring that much attention on themselves. They have shooters everywhere, and they're ski. It's basically SGA, high pick and roll, drive to the rack, kick out. I got Muscala, I got Jalen Williams, I got guys that can shoot the rock. Like it's not that complicated. And I think this offense and this team in general, it's being constructed to eventually be like that. You're getting Bojan. We'll see if they can add another shooter like a Grant Williams in free agency or by the trade deadline. You got Burks. Like guys that can just hit threes, dude. Isaiah Stewart's got it now. You want guys to just, let's go. We're young. Let's run down the court. We got arguably one of the fastest players with the ball in his hands, and Jaden Ivey. We got Cade, the just tactician, everything, man. Has a whole plethora of moves in his arsenal. That's what they got to get to. Like how the Thunder are playing basketball this year. One of my favorite teams, even without Chet, too. They don't have Chet this year. And they still look pretty good. They're almost 500. I know against the West, but still, it beat the Lakers last night. It was a tough environment to play in, but still, man, just how they set up their offense, just what they do, their scheme. I think for a Pistons fan, you're like, man, I hope next year when they get in that head coach, the next head coach, that can be implemented, because with Ivy and his penetration ability and Cade, man, just keep adding shooters and guys that can defend, because that's what OKC has too.
Yeah,
like they're one of the best teams in transition. Like people don't talk about that enough defensively for a young team. So they got length. So the Pistons are working on it. They're getting there. But until then, got to just take it day by day.
I think
get through this season.
To wrap, man. I think that's a good place to wrap. Look, we will be back tomorrow. We have to. For the trade deadline. I'll be back up here. We'll definitely talk. We'll wrap. If anything big goes down, we'll talk about it. If nothing goes down, we'll talk about what that means, where they could be looking. Because we know this. The trade that went down to get us Jalen Duren, those conversations started before the trade deadline last season. Pistons and Knicks were already in talk. So just because something doesn't go down doesn't mean that these teams aren't working towards something. So, hey, listen, for Woodward Pistons, Mr. Everything, Jeff Iafrate, my name is Brandon Dent, a.k.a. Detroit Kool-Aid. We're going to do this drum roll for Mr. Detroit News Rob Beard, too. Hey, yo, shout out to the legend.
The legend.
Hey, Detroit News Rob Beard. Till next time, you all.